Canada's East Coast is one of the most misunderstood regions in North America. People think it's poor, economically irrelevant, a place people leave, not a place people go. And on the surface, the numbers seem to support that. The Atlantic provinces, Newfoundland and Labrador, Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick have some of the highest unemployment rates in Canada, the lowest average incomes, the oldest populations. But beneath that story is something far bigger, and almost no one is talking about it. A hidden mix of geography, resources, and strategic location that could reshape Canada's future, and even shift power in the North Atlantic. For centuries, this region sat on the gateway between continents, which made it one of the most strategically important coastlines in North America. This isn't a story about nostalgia or tourism. It's a story about geography, the kind that shapes resources, redirects trade, and decides which regions rise or fall. This is why Canada's East Coast may become one of the most important regions in North America, and almost no one sees it coming. Let's start with the numbers everyone sees. The Atlantic provinces, Newfoundland and Labrador, Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick, have a combined population of about 2.4 million people. That's less than the city of Toronto, less than the Vancouver metro area. For decades, the region struggled with outmigration and aging. Young people leave for jobs in Alberta, Ontario, or British Columbia. Only recently has immigration reversed that trend, but the economic reputation hasn't caught up. The unemployment rate in Newfoundland and Labrador hovers around 10 to 12%, well above the national average. Average household income in the Atlantic provinces is about $70,000, compared to $98,800 in Alberta or $95,300 in Ontario. The region receives billions in federal transfer payments every year just to maintain basic services. From the outside, it looks like economic decline, a region left behind by globalization and modern industry. But this perception is based on looking at the wrong metrics. Because when you measure an economy by population and employment, you miss something critical: resource wealth. And Canada's East Coast is sitting on resources that most people don't even know exist. Let's start with the most obvious one: fish. The Grand Banks off the coast of Newfoundland is one of the richest fishing grounds on Earth. For centuries, it supplied cod to Europe and North America. Then, in 1992, the cod fishery collapsed due to overfishing. The Canadian government imposed a moratorium. Tens of thousands of jobs disappeared overnight. The East Coast as a victim of resource depletion. But here's what they don't tell you: the Grand Banks is recovering. And it's not just cod. Shrimp, crab, lobster, and other species have exploded in value. The Atlantic lobster fishery alone is worth over $1 billion annually. Snow crab, another billion. Nova Scotia is now the world's largest exporter of lobster. New Brunswick dominates the North American snow crab market. Most people think of Prince Edward Island as a tourist destination, and of Green Gables, red sand beaches. But this tiny island produces 25% of Canada's potatoes. It's an agricultural powerhouse, and it's a wind energy leader, generating over around a quarter of its electricity from wind turbines, the highest percentage in Canada. For an island with just 160,000 people, that's remarkable. But fish and agriculture are just the surface. Beneath the ocean floor lies something far more valuable. In 1979, the Hibernia oil field was discovered when the Chevron et al. Hibernia P15 well struck oil about 315 kilometers off the coast of Newfoundland and Labrador. It was one of the largest oil discoveries in Canadian history. Estimated reserves, over 1 billion barrels. But there was a problem. The field sits in some of the harshest ocean conditions on Earth. Icebergs, 100-foot waves, brutal storms. It took 18 years and $6 billion to build the Hibernia platform, a massive concrete structure weighing 1.2 million tons, designed to withstand iceberg impacts. Production began in 1997, and it changed everything. Today, Newfoundland and Labrador produces about 200,000 barrels of oil per day from offshore fields: Hibernia, Terra Nova, White Rose, and Hebron. That's worth roughly $5 to $7 billion annually at current prices. But here's what most people don't realize. This is just the beginning. The Flemish Pass, a deep-water basin east of Newfoundland and Labrador, holds roughly a 1.2 billion barrels of already discovered oil in fields like Bay du Nord. And geologists believe the wider area could contain many billions more in resource potential. The Bay du Nord project alone could produce 300 million barrels over its lifetime. And that's just what's already been found. Government resource assessments suggest that just a portion of Newfoundland offshore basins could hold over 60 billion barrels of oil equivalent in resource potential. For comparison, Alberta's oil sands hold about 170 billion barrels of reserves, and Newfoundland and Labrador's offshore is one of the only regions in Canada with resource potential even in the same conversation. But it's not just oil. Natural gas. The Scotian Shelf off Nova Scotia contains massive natural gas reserves. The Sable Offshore Energy Project produced gas for 20 years before depleting in 2018. Past projects like Sable and Deep Panuke showed how much gas was hidden on the Scotian Shelf. And geologists still see untapped potential in areas like the Laurentian Basin, even if major new fields haven't been developed yet. While Newfoundland has offshore oil, New Brunswick has something else. The Bay of Fundy, the highest tides in the world, up to 16 meters. That's a 5-story building of water moving in and out twice a day. That's enormous theoretical tidal energy potential. In some studies, enough to cover a big share of Atlantic Canada's electricity demand if it could be fully harnessed. New Brunswick's St. John LNG terminal already feeds gas into US-linked pipelines, and while plans to convert it into an export hub to Europe keep resurfacing, they've repeatedly stalled. And there's one more energy source that often gets overlooked: hydroelectric power. Churchill Falls in Labrador is one of the world's largest underground hydroelectric plants. 5,428 megawatts of capacity, enough electricity for several million homes. Most of that power flows to Quebec under a controversial 1969 deal, but it shows the region's massive renewable energy potential. And then there's the future. Offshore wind. The East Coast has some of the strongest and most consistent wind resources in North America. The ocean is shallow enough for fixed-bottom turbines in many areas, deep enough for floating turbines in others. Nova Scotia is targeting gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030 and starting its first bids, while Labrador is approving large onshore wind-to-hydrogen projects. The region is now moving from plans into real early-stage development. This isn't speculative. This is happening now. But energy is only part of the story. Labrador is one of the most resource-rich regions in Canada, and almost nobody knows about it. Let's start with iron ore. The Labrador Trough contains some of the largest iron ore deposits in the world. The region has been mining iron since the 1950s. Today, the Iron Ore Company of Canada operates massive open-pit mines near Labrador City. Production: about 17 to 23 million tons of iron ore products per year. This iron ore feeds steel mills in the United States, Europe, and Asia. It's worth billions annually. But iron is just the beginning. Nickel, copper, cobalt, all critical for electric vehicle batteries. The Voisey's Bay mine in northern Labrador is one of the richest nickel deposits ever discovered. Holds around 140 million tons of ore containing nickel, copper, and cobalt. Vale, the Brazilian mining giant, operates the mine. Production feeds battery manufacturers worldwide, and there's more being discovered. The Labrador Trough is still being explored. New deposits of critical minerals are being found regularly. Then there's rare earth elements. Remember those elements that China controls 80% of global production? The ones essential for smartphones, wind turbines, and military technology? Newfoundland has them. The Strange Lake deposit on the Quebec-Labrador border is one of the world's major rare earth projects, especially for heavy rare earths like dysprosium and terbium. Strange Lake isn't in commercial production yet, but as the world tries to reduce dependence on Chinese rare earths, these deposits become strategically critical. While Labrador has nickel and rare earths, New Brunswick has potash. Potash is a critical fertilizer, essential for global food production. New Brunswick once had major potash corp, now Nutrien mines producing up to millions of tons a year. but the Sussex Piccadilly mine has been idle since 2016 and permanently closed since 2018. But the story of potash in New Brunswick isn't finished. Just west of Sussex is the Millstream Potash Deposit, a known but never mined ore body with thick potash-rich layers and hundreds of millions of tons of in-place resource. Today, Atlantic Potash Millstream Corporation holds the rights and is trying to turn Millstream into the province's next major potash mine, after investing tens of millions in exploration and studies. If fertilizer demand keeps rising and the numbers work, Millstream could bring large-scale potash production back to New Brunswick. As global food security becomes more critical, these deposits become more valuable. While Labrador has rare earths and New Brunswick has potash, Nova Scotia has something the construction industry can't live without: gypsum. Nova Scotia has historically been one of the world's largest gypsum suppliers and has produced the vast majority of Canada's gypsum, much of it shipped to US wallboard plants. The province also has massive underground salt deposits that supply road salt for Nova Scotia and much of eastern Canada and the northeastern US. These aren't glamorous resources, but they're essential, and they generate billions in export revenue. And here's the kicker. Outside of iron ore and Voisey's Bay, much of the critical mineral potential in Labrador and the wider region is still underdeveloped. Why? Because Labrador is remote, infrastructure is limited, transportation is expensive, but that's changing. Now let's talk about something most people completely overlook: location. Canada's east coast sits at one of the most strategically important positions in the Western Hemisphere. Look at a map, not a flat map, a globe. The shortest air and sea routes between eastern North America and Europe bend north toward Newfoundland, the closest part of the continent to Europe. During World War II, St. John's became a critical Allied convoy assembly point in the Battle of the Atlantic. Its harbor was crowded with merchant ships and warships preparing to cross the ocean. Why? Because geography made it the gateway between continents. That geography hasn't changed. Today, transatlantic shipping routes still pass near Newfoundland. Undersea fiber optic cables connecting North America and Europe run along the ocean floor off the east coast. But here's what's about to make this even more important: the Arctic. As Arctic ice melts, new shipping routes are opening. The Northwest Passage through Canada's Arctic could become a major trade route between Asia and Europe. And guess where ships entering or exiting the Northwest Passage pass? Right past Canada's east coast. St. John's could become a major refueling and resupply port for Arctic shipping. Halifax already has one of the largest natural harbors in the world, ice-free year-round. St. John, New Brunswick is a deep-water, year-round ice-free port on the Bay of Fundy and a major shipping hub linking Atlantic Canada to the northeastern United States. The Confederation Bridge connects Prince Edward Island to the mainland, the longest bridge over ice-covered waters in the world. These aren't just infrastructure, they're strategic connectors that make the entire region more accessible. But there's another strategic factor most people forget about: the military. The North Atlantic is back in focus. NATO countries are tracking Russian submarine patrols and watching how China shows more interest in sea lanes and undersea cables. On this side of the ocean, Canada's east coast sits on the front edge of that security line. CFB Halifax is home to Canada's Atlantic Fleet and is the country's largest military base by personnel. From here, Canadian warships and patrol aircraft watch over the shipping lanes that link North America to Europe. The United States also operates radar, air, and naval assets across the region, focused on surveillance and anti-submarine warfare. This isn't Cold War nostalgia. It's how the North Atlantic is being viewed again, as a strategic theater that runs straight past Canada's east coast. And it makes Canada's east coast far more strategically important than population or GDP numbers suggest. So if the East Coast has all these resources and strategic advantages, why isn't it booming? The answer is infrastructure, or rather, the lack of it. Labrador's mineral wealth is trapped by geography. The region is vast, remote, and sparsely populated. Roads are limited. Rail lines are few. Getting resources from mine to market is incredibly expensive. The iron ore from Labrador City travels about 418 kilometers by rail to Sept-Îles, Quebec, where it's loaded onto ships. That rail line was built in the 1950s and is operating at capacity. Deepwater projects off Newfoundland and Labrador rank among the highest cost offshore oil plays in the world, thanks to ice, storms, and deep water. The East Coast doesn't have the pipeline infrastructure that Alberta has. It doesn't have the highway networks that Ontario has. And here's the brutal reality. Building infrastructure in the East Coast is expensive. The terrain is rugged. The climate is harsh. The population is small, so there's less tax base to fund projects. But this is starting to change. Ottawa is now pouring money into infrastructure through national programs. More than $180 billion over 12 years, plus new funds for trade corridors and local infrastructure. Atlantic ports like Halifax are already seeing tens of millions for upgrades to terminals, rail, and green shipping. Private companies are investing too. Mining companies building roads to new deposits. Energy companies developing offshore facilities. The infrastructure gap is closing. Slowly. For the first time in decades, there's real money and real projects aimed at closing it. So let's come back to the perception problem. Canada's East Coast looks poor when you measure it by population, employment, and average income. But those metrics miss the real story. The region sits on offshore oil resource potential that ranks among the largest in Canada, some of the world's richest fishing grounds, massive iron ore, nickel, copper, and rare earth deposits, strategic geography controlling North Atlantic and Arctic access, military importance as NATO's eastern flank. This isn't about nostalgia for fishing villages or tourism. This is about resources that over decades of development could be worth trillions of dollars and geography that controls critical trade and military routes. The East Coast problem isn't lack of resources. It's lack of infrastructure to extract and transport those resources efficiently. But that's changing. As Arctic shipping routes open, the East Coast becomes more strategically important. As the world seeks alternatives to Chinese rare earths, Labrador's deposits become critical. As offshore wind and hydrogen production expand, the East Coast's energy potential grows. And as geopolitical tensions rise in the North Atlantic, the region's military importance increases. The East Coast isn't economically irrelevant. It's economically undervalued. On paper, it doesn't look like one of North America's powerhouses. But in terms of resources, location, and strategic position, Canada's East Coast quietly ranks among the most important regions on the continent. Most people just don't realize it yet. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Is Canada's East Coast about to boom, or will infrastructure challenges keep it undervalued? If this changed how you see Canada's Atlantic provinces, hit like and subscribe. We have more interesting geoeconomic stories lined up.